Hi, I'm Kalena.
And I'm Jayne Frishia.
And this is On the Other Foot, a no-holds-barred look at the world of dance.
Each week, we bring you a podcast on nutrition, lifestyle, and mental health for regular people who happen to dance.
Every Tuesday, we're going to take on a topic in the dance world that isn't spoken about enough and approach it honestly for our listeners. Isn't that nice of us? Alright, so today we are not only excited and over the moon to introduce our guest, but we are also attempting not to fangirl too much with every word we say. Today's guest is the one and only Miko Fogarty. If you grew up around the same era as Jayne and I, you probably watched the documentary First Position over and over again, which Miko starred in alongside other stars such as Aaron Bell and Michaela de Prince. She danced professionally with the Birmingham Royal Ballet and placed in numerous prestigious international ballet competitions. But after a period of silence in 2017, Miko came out on her Instagram with the news that she had started a new pursuit. She was now working on her bachelor's degree at UC Berkeley. She spoke at TEDx Berkeley in April this year to open up about her journey into the next chapter of her life. We're so lucky to have the chance to talk with her today about her experiences. So first off, what were the first signs of a career in ballet not working for you? Did you experience a period of denial for what was starting to happen, and how did that feel?
Yeah, so I started experiencing eating problems as my first signs of a career in ballet not working when I was probably around 15 years old. And that was really hard at that time because in ballet, oftentimes, either by your coaches or people around you, you're kind of pressured to be a bit skinnier. And it's really tough, especially during your teenage years when you're still developing and you don't have that great self-esteem, but you feel like you're not good enough ever. So that was quite difficult for me when I was growing up. Even though I was really skinny, I just kind of dealt with that still quite a lot. But it was the biggest change, I guess, and the biggest signs were when I was in my company, when I joined a company, and that's when I really felt and experienced a lot of different signs of a career in ballet that I didn't really want to do anymore. And so I did experience a period of denial. I really wanted to make it happen, I guess, because I worked so hard for it. But in the end, I just knew in my heart that this was not really what I could see myself doing for a long time. And I knew I would really never be completely happy with my body. You never reach perfection that way. And I knew that, but I didn't want to be so hard on myself in that way all the time anymore. In terms of just the eating problems I was going through and just never feeling like I was good enough with my body. So I didn't want to deal with that anymore. As well as other things, I had performed all around the world and I had experienced so much in ballet already that I felt like I had experienced enough to be able to do something else in my life. And I was also very interested in other aspects of life outside of ballet that I wanted to pursue. So I guess all of that together, it just felt really right for me to change to a different career, even though the hardest part for sure was kind of telling everybody. That was definitely the hardest part for me.
Yeah, I imagine telling everyone would be. I hadn't even honestly thought about that. I'm sure that was very, very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely the toughest part of the whole career change was telling everybody. That was the hardest part. For me to realize I wanted to do something else was difficult, but it felt so right that it wasn't too bad. But having to open up to everybody, especially because I'd been followed for a long time by all these different people, on social media, on YouTube, everything. I just personified myself as such a dancer, a ballerina, and it was really hard for me to not be that anymore, I guess, for other people. And it took me a full 2.5 years to finally open up to everybody that I was not dancing anymore and that I was pursuing other things. And it's still something I'm working on today as well, but I'm much better today.
Yeah, I feel like opening up and like being holistically like honest with the world is literally the last step in kind of accepting something. You can accept it as much as you can yourself, but having the courage to like openly share that with the world is that kind of overarching level of accepting what you're doing and like being proud of it.
Exactly, that's 100% right. I thought I was gonna be disappointing so many people, and I'm sure I did disappoint some people, but it was much healthier for me mentally and physically to do something else, and it's like the best thing for me, and I've had zero regrets since I've switched. And so, and honestly, like people really do want the best for you, especially if they do love you and who you are. They don't really care whatever you're doing as long as it's making you happy. So that's something I realized as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure it was very freeing to know like who was willing to support you and who was going to be there in the long run, and to just kind of, I'm sure it was almost cathartic in a way, really, to just say, this is my decision for me and I'm okay with telling you now, and if you don't like that, then that's too bad because I'm me.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, like I thought about it way too much. Like everyone I polled is like has been super supportive. So
Yeah.
there's nothing for me to be afraid of really, even though I was afraid for like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Going through, like you were saying, a sort of like time where you realized you had an eating disorder, and a time where you realized you needed people to be gracious with your decision. Like a support system is important. So who like guided you the most? And I mean, you just told us like you felt very supported, but in that time period where you were trying to decide, like, did you feel lost and isolated, or was there like who stepped up and said, hey, it's all right?
That's a really good question. I would have to say probably like the year before I made my decision to not do ballet anymore, I did feel very, very, very isolated and lost. Not 100%. Well, yeah, I did feel lost a lot of that time because I felt so insecure talking about what I was going through with anybody in my ballet company that I was at, and even with my parents. Like I did not like talking about it at all, like about any of my eating problems I was going through. Even though looking back, it is very important to talk to people and get feedback and get help. I didn't do that because I felt like no one would understand what I was going through. And if I did even mention that I wasn't doing any ballet anymore, I felt like people would 100% not understand, or they just be so disappointed. So yeah, definitely that during that time before I made my decision, it was I did feel very isolated, and it was awful. Especially my ballet company, like everyone was doing, it was their job and everyone was happy there. Well, I don't know if everyone's happy there, but everyone was settled in and everything. And I didn't like, I wanted to do a completely different career. So it was very, very hard for me to open up about it.
Yeah.
And so I did feel very isolated.
Yeah.
But at the same time, my family in England, like my grandparents lived there and my aunts and uncles lived there. They were very supportive, and they were some of the ones that did help me realize what I wanted to do next in my life, and they were there to support me anytime. So that was good.
Yeah.
I really appreciate this like approach you're using just in your language of saying like, this is what was next in my life, because I think, I mean, we don't know you at all. You've just graciously like agreed to talk to us, but you know, there's a lot of people who don't know you at all, but like you were saying, looked at your career and maybe thought one thing or another. But I really appreciate that you refer to it as like the next chapter and not like I stopped and started something. Like I think it's really cool that you're like, this is just the next thing I do. I think that's a cool thing to emphasize. Like you can have really fulfilling like ballet career, which you did, and then you can do the next thing. It's just a cool way. It's cool to hear you talk about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about it, because I still have ballet in my life a lot. Like, I just came from teaching like 3 hours of ballet, and I still watch ballet a lot. Like, a lot of my friends are still in the ballet world. So I definitely don't feel like it's my past. Well, sometimes I feel like it's my past life, but like, it definitely feels more like it's just the next chapter in the book that I'm in right now.
It's not like just because you turned that page, you're a completely different person. Like, you're still, it's just a continuation of, like, the life that you were living, which I think a lot of people, when they are approached with decisions like this, in any career, even, like, people changing their major in college, it feels like starting a completely new book when really it's just kind of like turning the page, and it might be kind of a heavy page and a hard page to turn, but like it, once you do it, I feel like it's never as like, oh my gosh, identity crisis as before.
Yeah, and honestly, like the experiences that you did learn from your past majors or your past careers or your past whatever pages in your journey, like it helps with the next pages. Like you learn a lot from the life lessons or experiences that you dealt with, and it really does like make you who you are and help you with, even if you think like biology and ballet are completely different, like ballet has helped me so much in school in ways that I would have never thought. So I think that too.
Yeah, so at this point we are going to throw it to a quick break, and we will be back in just a second to keep talking to Miko Fogarty. Hey everybody, Kalena here. Before we keep going with this amazing interview, let's take a quick break to talk about On the Other Foot. I know, as if we haven't talked about it enough. On the Other Foot is currently entirely run and produced by 2 college students and funded by the little change in our piggy banks, as well as the generosity of our guests and contributors. If you'd like to support On the Other Foot, consider making a contribution by becoming a supporter through Anchor. You can become a supporter today by navigating to our Anchor page and clicking Support This Podcast. Your contribution supports conversations between dancers, teachers, and all regular people who are a part of the On the Other Foot community. Thank you so much for listening, and enjoy the rest of this episode. So we are back. We are talking with Miko Fogarty, and this is the second half of the first episode. So I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but what role did your childhood of being in the spotlight and having kind of a large following play in your decision? How did your fame come into play kind of when you were at your worst? Like, did it bother you or make you feel trapped at all?
That's a really, really great question. So my following did definitely have kind of an impact when I was deciding to leave, because it did make it a bit harder when I was deciding to leave ballet, because I knew there was all these eyes like following to see what I would do next. You know, I'd like won some competitions. I just joined a company. I knew that people were watching to see what I would do next. And so that kind of definitely made it a little bit harder when I was trying to decide what I did want to do next, which was not in ballet. But it didn't really influence my decision. I was still 100% sure I wanted to do something else, and go into health sciences. But it did make it like slightly harder, I would say, especially because I labeled myself as a ballet dancer for so long. And in terms of fame, in terms of my Instagram, when I was kind of at my worst, it was so weird for me because I felt like I was posting about a completely different person online, which is, I think, what happens a lot on social media. It's like not who that person really is, or like you don't see what that person's going through their Instagram. And I was posting all these exciting things that were happening in my ballet career. Like I was going to all these amazing countries and I was doing all these amazing shows, which I was doing, but inside I was like struggling so much, and I didn't know how to put that across on Instagram, and I didn't really want to because I don't know, I didn't feel comfortable putting it on Instagram at that moment. So I didn't, and it was really weird because I felt like I was posting about someone completely different, and I was it was like a completely different person I was posting about, which was definitely strange. So when I did stop ballet, I did kind of take a long break from Instagram, where I didn't post at all very much, and I'd actually like deleted the app off my phone for I don't exactly know how long it was, but it was maybe like a whole year or something like that. It was a long time. But then when I was coming more into, in terms of my story, and I was becoming more comfortable telling my story, then I re-downloaded Instagram and started posting again. And And then like slowly but surely I became more comfortable with telling my story and opening up about it. And now I'm completely comfortable. So yeah, that's
Really cool. Can you, this is kind of diverging from the questions we had set, but do you mind talking a little bit about like the culture of labeling yourself as a dancer and nothing more in ballet? And if you experienced that even with adults and professional companies, and just kind of how it affected you, especially as a child?
right. That's a good question. I mean, I think in Instagram or in social media in general, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, whatever, Twitter, whatever you have, sometimes you kind of want to have a brand where you are associated with certain things. Like you're either associated with being like a traveling person that travels to all these countries, or you want to be like a soccer player and that's who you identify with. And for me, ballet posts always got way more likes than just like normal everyday posts. So then, you realize you get like double the likes if you post a ballet photo. So then you end up posting more ballet photos, especially if you have them from performances and stuff like that. So then, and I did just, I guess, ever since I was probably 10, I was like, I'm going to be a ballerina. That's my identity. That's what I'm going to tell everyone. That's my life. And it was my life. My life did revolve around ballet. So it was very true. That was what I was doing and pursuing. So it did make sense. But in terms of social media, it does make sense when people kind of label themselves as certain things. I don't know if it's like, it's hard when you do change. Like from when I did change my career and I was not that anymore, it was like very difficult for me to transition into. Even today, I'm like struggling with like what to post on Instagram, I would say. Because I felt like so many of my followers were following me for ballet, but I don't really care. I'm just going to post whatever from now on. But it's definitely challenging when you do change to something else. But if you are like a ballet dancer and that's your career and you see yourself doing it for a while, then I don't think there's like a problem posting about that, especially if your followers do really enjoy seeing that part of your life and if you get a lot of feedback from it. I don't think there's really a problem. Just when you change it's hard, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I always find it really interesting how there's like, I know people who post exclusively about ballet and like use a ton of hashtags and tag all of their dance brands and stuff like that in all of their posts. And then there's people kind of like what I do, where sometimes I post normal stuff and sometimes I post about dance. It just kind of depends what I'm doing when I want to post something. And then there's also people I know who barely post about dance on their Instagram. Like all their photos are just like of them doing stuff, like going to restaurants, hanging out with friends and stuff like that, instead of, there's like no performance photos on their Instagram, which I think is very interesting, just the way that people divide their lives like that, even when they spend an equal amount of time all doing the same things. Like you can be in the room with people who posted 8 times today about ballet and people who have never posted about ballet in their life, but you all dance for the same hours and the same job.
Yeah, and it's what people want to get out of Instagram too, like whether they're there to kind of promote themselves as a dancer, or if it's like for work, or if it's just for them to just show their close family and friends what they've been up to, or if it's more for like stalking other people and seeing what other people are up to. Some people have social media for that reason. So I think everyone has different reasons for having social media as well.
Fair. But yeah, thank you. I wanted your perspective on that.
Yeah.
We often hear criticism for people who are prodigies, quote unquote, not just in ballet, but really in anything. I mean, I guess prodigies mainly happen in the arts, but you get a lot of criticism for them getting burnt out too early, and in ballet getting burnt out or not really knowing how to work in like a traditional company setting. Do you think that the stereotype like has any truth? Did you see any truth with it in yourself? And what did you think about the way like did it all factor into your decision to step away from professional ballet?
I would say I think the stereotype is sometimes true. Not all the time, but it can be true for certain situations. So, for example, for kids that do a ton of performances or they do really, really well when they're young, they can get burnt out. But then also there's other kids that do really well when they're young and they just become like the best stars in the world, you know? And so I don't think it applies to or like all the young prodigies out there. And it's not a stereotype that always happens. I think for certain situations it may happen and for others it doesn't. But for me, I think it did happen a little bit where I did perform like a lot, like did so many competitions and so many performances when I was young and really did like a lot of hard technique at a really, really young age. Like I was doing like fortes ever since I was like 7. Like literally really young. And it was good because I was able to really improve my technique over the years and my technique got better and better, which was really good. But it, but I don't think that was the reason why I decided to quit at all. And it wasn't really even the company that was bad. Like I was happy like with the company. It was just like ballet as a profession and in terms of kind of body image was the reason why I decided to leave. Personally, like that was the biggest reason for me was kind of body image issues. And so it wasn't really that I had been doing it for too long. I didn't feel like I'd been doing it for too long or that I didn't fit into my company or anything like that. And I was okay with company setting. That wasn't the problem. It's kind of more about like ballet in general.
Fair.
And did it make a decision or did it help me make the decision to step away from professional ballet? I mean, in a way it slightly did because it helped it easier for me to step away from ballet because I had experienced so much and I had traveled around the world performing in so many amazing countries and so many amazing theaters. So it did make it actually easier for me to step away from ballet because I had experienced a lot already and felt like I would be happy with what I've done already in ballet and I could kind of move on to the next step. So it was, I guess, helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's not necessarily true as much as it's kind of like, you know, you do so much when you're little and you set yourself up for success that you become that and you like expect, not that you like, I expect to be the best, but like your brain chemically adjusts to like want that feedback and need, like your standards literally get higher because that's what your like brain is getting fed, and psychologically like that makes you expect that, and that can be a hard thing to adjust to, and that makes complete sense. Like I feel like everybody has gone through that with something, like being really, really good at something, and then for any reason, either you kind of stop doing it as much, like when I did gymnastics when I was little, that's how I felt about that, and then I stopped doing it, and then I went back to the gym like 3 years later, and I like didn't really like doing it anymore because I was like, this, like I can't do anything, and people were like, well, you just need to train more, you took a bunch of time off, and I'm like, it's not the same, like something about it is just not the same when it's like that, and I feel like that's just how it works. Like it's not really something that you can be like, oh, they shouldn't have done that. It's just like, that's how it is.
And if you look at like the biggest stars in ballet or in any arts, like you look at their childhood and they were already amazing.
I know, yeah.
It's not like they burnt out. Like you look at the most amazing dancers or the most amazing musicians and you look at when they were young and they were like young prodigies, like all of them. Or almost all of them, but so.
Yeah, like to get that good, that fast without being literally like 60 years old by the time you're able to do stuff, like it takes that extra pushing and that extra striving when you're really young, which is really hard, and it is hard and hard to go through when you're really little, but it ends up being worth it. So I feel like that's why we keep doing that and we keep pushing ourselves when we're really young.
I also like having your perspective on it, Miko, because I'm sure, like, I mean, you were famous on Instagram, so I'm sure you're no stranger to people commenting and, like, acting like they know you and your situation when they don't. Like, I'm sure that happened, probably not with an incredible frequency. I hope not, at least. But, I mean, because you, like, we were of the generation that grew up, like, watching First Position and whatnot. And so when you get teachers and people who speculate on people that they don't know. Like, I think it's just nice to get your perspective on, like, yeah, this happens to some people, but not everyone. And it wasn't like the main factor in my decision. I think that that's important for people to hear, like, no matter where they are in their ballet career, to just kind of remember that people are personal people and not just what you want to project onto them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So thanks for listening to part 1 of our interview with former Birmingham Royal Ballet dancer and UC Berkeley pre-med student Miko Fogarty. We are so lucky and grateful to be talking with her today. You can follow
We
her
hope you
at
enjoyed
Miko
this week's
Fogarty
episode of
Instagram
On the
and
Other
watch her
Foot.
TEDx
We
Berkeley
want to
talk
connect
on
with you
YouTube
on days
to hear
other
more
than
about her
Tuesday,
journey.
so be sure to
Thank you
follow
for
us on
listening,
Instagram
listen
and
in next
Facebook
week to
at
hear part 2 of this
otherfoot.pod.
interview.
And visit our website to learn more about how On the Other Foot started and join our mailing list.
If you have any questions for me and Jayne, or would like to suggest a topic or guest, email us at ontheotherfoot.podcast@gmail.com.
And please subscribe. It makes a huge difference to us. We want to offer you all discount codes and annoy you with sponsorship ads, and we cannot do that unless you subscribe. So please, do it now.
And above all, thanks for listening. It really means a lot to us. We hope you tune in to On the Other Foot next week for more conversation on the world of dance.